Welcome to the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board. We welcome you who are assembled together here with us in live session, as well as those members of the public who are joining us virtually. As I mentioned, this is the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority Board meeting, regularly scheduled and noticed for today. My name is Lowry Snow. I'm one of the co-chairs, and seated to my left is Representative Jordan Tusher, who is the other co-chair. And I'm reminded by our director that we now have a quorum assembled here in person, and we also have some additional members who have joined us virtually, making a quorum. So with that, we'll move forward. Since our last meeting, site crews continue to make good progress on critical background infrastructure at the site as we prepare to go vertical, as they say, later this year. We look forward today to a presentation from our Point partners, known as the Point Partners. They will highlight the timeline for that construction and what Utah's citizens can expect to see on site. We will also be pleased to receive a legislative recap and report from Representative Tusher, who of course serves in the legislature as a member of the House, and he's going to update us and educate us on relevant legislation passed this last session. So with that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is opening this meeting up for public comment. We do that because we recognize that the Point is a public entity, and as a board, we have a responsibility to ensure that the project reflects the public values and that we hear public comments. We hear from the public. We take that seriously. That's why we take this matter up near the beginning of our agenda. We value input from our residents and citizens, as long as they follow the procedures outlined in the posted agenda. We have some folks here appearing in person, and we have members of the public joining us online. So with that, we'll ask anyone in this meeting that's a member of the public that cares to make a comment come forward. Don't see anyone coming forward or raising their hand, and so I'll ask Jen, do we have any member of the public requesting comment? Okay, so with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to consider approving the minutes of our last meeting held February 11th, 2026. We'll consider approving those board minutes. We're grateful to Jen for making sure that board members receive a good and accurate, complete record of those minutes. I've reviewed them. Any comments from the board before I consider a motion with respect to approving those minutes? Motion to approve the minutes by Mayor Walker. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Tusher. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. I'll rule the motion carries unanimously. The minutes, those minutes of the February 11th meeting are approved. Next item on the agenda, we do this regularly when we meet, is for a financial update. In a few minutes or in a minute, we're going to turn time to Don Willie, who is the director of our operations. Also, as a public board, we recognize that the trust placed in us by the public to ensure that the authority funds are appropriated and spent in a manner consistent with our approved budget. So with that, we'll turn the time to Don, as I said, our director, to review our monthly financials ending February 28th of this year. Don, let me make sure, let me make sure your mic is on. I think you have a light now.
Thank you, Chair Snow. I appreciate that. We'll make this a quick update. We, at this point, the end of February, should have 33% of our budget remaining. of our total budget, we have 86% remaining. So we are in a healthy financial state. We do have several large invoices that have been paid since the end of February, or we expect to be paid. That will help to equalize and bring us on track. So we'll see that update in our next meeting. We do have three budget categories on which we are burning a little high. These have been addressed in prior meetings, but just to recap, insurance and bonds and membership dues are both one-time expenses. So they show as a higher burn rate at the beginning of the year and equalize by the end of the year. The one where we've been tracking and watching this is on our data processing charges. This will just require in our next board meeting a budget adjustment. We had an extra machine on the bill with DTS that we didn't budget for originally. And so with that understanding, we'll now be able to make sure that we budget correctly in FY in the next fiscal year 27. But in this, we'll require just a budget adjustment in our next board meeting to carry us through the end of this fiscal year. Aside from that, everything is looking on track.
Thank you, Don. Does that complete your initial report?
It does.
Thanks. Questions or comments from members of the board? I would recognize again, members of our Finance and Audit Subcommittee, Mayor Ramsey, Mayor Walker, and our Director, Michael Ambre. Any comments from any of members of that subcommittee? Not seeing any lights and not indicating members who are joining us virtually indicating they have any questions. The chair would entertain a motion approving the financials to the ending February 28th, 2026 as presented by our Director of Operations. So moved by Mayor Walker. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Tusher. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
And
Donna.
Mr. Chair, it's Jenny Wilson. I was on for that vote. Sorry for the delay today, and I'm an aye on that question.
Thank you, Mayor. We will register your vote accordingly. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, I'm pretty excited about. So, Robert, would you like to come forward? I'm sorry, Robert, you can come forward, but I don't want to. Let's see. Yes, item number 5 is the Point Partners update. Robert, glad to see you, and I know your partner to your right, but I'm glad to have you both here. Let me get both of your mics on. We try to invite you quarterly, as you know, to provide an update on the development. Robert is the Vice President of Development of the Wadsworth Development Group. We appreciate our relationship with our partners, and we're reaching, I think, a pivotal time with the development. And so I'm probably not the only one excited about this update. I think members of the board are generally. So with that, we'll turn the time to you. Take it.
Thank you, Co-Chair Snow. Is this on?
Yes.
Just be a little closer.
Just keep it close to your.
We have Zach Clegg here with me, who's with Lincoln Property Company, also Vice President with Lincoln. So happy to be here. Very much appreciative of the relationship also that we have with Forty Mountain State Land Authority Board and staff specifically, who we work with on, I would say, an hourly basis, on a daily basis. So it's staff and us are on the phone, multiple times a day, working through numerous things. So we're just working on pulling up the presentation here, trying to get joined in. As we do that, maybe I'll just ad lib for just a second on the project. Real estate development is something, and especially real estate development at this scale, it's not something that moves in weeks or even months. It's something that at quickest moves in quarters and half year kind of increments. And so I think what you'll see in this update from us is that's happening, that we're moving many kind of multiple simultaneous these things forward. But we can talk about the promenade and some of these things that are really kind of nearing the end of starting to get to a point where we can start construction, and other pieces are moving to getting to that point as well. We will be breaking ground this year. And as soon as we can pull it up, I can give you a better update maybe from the slides. But we'll be breaking ground this year, and looking forward to doing it. We have, from a high level, we have the promenade, we have the event venue, we have our H5A development, which is multifamily over retail. We have H3A, which is multifamily office and retail with a public parking deck. And those two pieces are two separate projects. The public piece and the private piece is moving simultaneously together. And then we have our affordable housing item happening. We have a hotel partnership that we're forming and working on. So multiple items. All right, I think we've got it here. Okay, we're up. I talked about the numerous projects we have going on. Here's a visual that you can see, the kind of the core of the hub of the development, starting with the promenade, one being that promenade road. It's more than just a road, right? We have the kiosks buildings that are retail buildings inside the middle of the promenade. We have kind of a destination to hang out, and that road and other improvements is our first project that's going to be breaking ground. We are on that project 95, well, effectively we're at 100%. We're on a conformance set now in terms of plans. We had a call yesterday with Mike and the team. This will be our first project, the promenade. If you want to go to the next slide, Zach, maybe we'll pop back. But this promenade, this is the first project that we have that is moving forward under, POMSLA as the governing body. And so, Mike can attest, we are working through things. Everything we're doing right now is for the first time. So trying to work through impact fees and trying to work through, what entitlements and what does the approval process look like, because this is an agency that's set up and we're doing it all for the first time, and we're working through that. The good thing is we're working together, and we've identified yesterday kind of the 4 or 5 key steps that we need for this promenade in order to break ground. We've got next 60 days in here. I think it should be shorter than that in terms of breaking ground on our promenade. So
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So not holding you to a time frame, but when do you think that might actually occur?
I put in here next 60 days for this public meeting, Representative or Lowry, and then I think we're targeting an April start, but we have a few key things that need to happen. We needed a waiver from Jordan Basin Sewer District. There's a board meeting on the 24th. So there are a few things that are kind of, we're dependent on in order to hit that time frame. So I'm giving myself a little cushion there, but let's call it April or early May is the target.
That's great news. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, appreciate it. Please ask questions as we go. The next item is the entertainment venue. And Zach, maybe we'll just go back up on the visual of where things sit. There we go. So the next one is number 2 on that slide. And that's the entertainment venue. This is the public infrastructure districts project. And this is well underway. In fact, today at this very hour, there's a group in California selecting finishes with Gensler, who is the architect for suites and other materials inside. So we are at a SD set of plans, or we finalized our SD set of plans, moving on to construction documents for the event venue. We're really excited about this event venue. We continue to be excited about it and think that it's going to be a great draw for the project. So that's well underway. We have also got our contractor. We've done an RFP and went out and selected Leighton Construction. So now we're getting our initial pricings back to make sure that we're in line. Right now, pricing has kind of come in line with kind of expectations. Slightly, actually a little more slightly favorable than what we were holding. We're not, I suspect there will be additional items that come up, as this always is the case. And so right now we're in line with kind of budget and expectation, but we have that contractor on board. The next one is our mixed use project, H5A, and that one is located here, as you see on the screen, as number 3 on the screen.
And I can speak to this one a little bit. So this is our first, privately capitalized vertical development that will be out here at the Point. This project is, as you can see here, a 360 unit multifamily building, for rent apartments with about 42,000 square feet of ground floor retail. And really this building will be it'll be Class A, on par with the projects you see in Sugar House, Brickyard, mid-rise Class A apartments. It'll be the nicest apartment building south of Sugar House. And, there's maybe 1 or 2 along the way, but we're bringing what we think will be a really kind of transformative project to this area, to Silicon Slopes, that will give those people that want to work here the type of living environment that they seek in these kind of urban mixed use communities. We've got an army of folks working on this. We're now at 50% construction documents. So if we're looking at percentage drawn, we're in kind of that like 85% complete range. And with the next, kind of 10 to 15% left to go, or 20%. I was in a meeting Monday for 9 hours with our architects, structural, electrical, mechanical engineers, going through all of our drawings page by page, doing a page turn. We're working in earnest on this project. I think with where we sit, it's all about trying to get the budget in the right spot and continuing to make this project as attractive as we can to financing partners, right? So continuing to work on that. We're excited about what we're building and designing there, and that's the project that's furthest along. The other project we're super excited about as well is another mixed use building. This is, if we go across the street up or on the visual here, this is this number 4 that we have, this mixed use project. It's essentially 3 buildings that wrap the public parking structure. This will be the first parking structure that will be built. That's a 1,000 stall parking garage that will serve a lot of the retail and the public and entertainment uses. We have really 3 buildings, these 2 that wrap the garage, and then this other third project right out, or building out here. This will be 2-floor jewel box retail. That project, we are currently through our 100% schematic set. So we've been working through those drawings for the last few months. A rendering you can see of the office building. This will be 70,000 square feet of retail, a little more than 30,000 square feet of office, and about 50 residential units, kind of boutique, higher end. And then it'll be wrapped around that 1,000 stall parking garage. We're out right now with our RFP for general contractors. So we're getting bids. We've done some pricing and we're getting our first kind of initial bids back, and we'll select that contractor over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Similar to the other one across the street, advancing design as quickly as we can and continuing to move that project forward.
I just note on that one, Zach, that that's on the private side. We're out. In addition to that is that parking deck behind, which is owned by the Public Infrastructure District. And so we're on a kind of a separate procurement mission, working hand in hand with Mike and DFCM on a kind of public procurement design build contract for that parking deck that would kind of sit hat in hand and work closely with the private development next door. So those 2 kind of initiatives are happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the next project we'll talk about here is this number 5 bullet. It really, as we think about it, like conceptually, as we think about timing and how we're delivering this, in order to make this development really function and be a community, we have to deliver the right critical mass at the right time. And so we're working on delivering the four corners of the promenade. So this is the Convergence Hall right across the street from here. But the first big multifamily project we talked about, this mixed use project we talked about, the next one we'll talk about in Convergence Hall. We're trying to align the timing of those such that they deliver around the same time so that when people move in, tenants, residents, we have at least like that main hub of the community. Otherwise, retail tenants are not going to pay us rent. They're not going to open their stores if there's nothing across the street. And so it's a coordinated effort right now, given the location and the current greenfield nature of the prison, to get the right hub and density at the opening date, right? So
Zach's maybe, the coordination piece of those deliveries is really critical and is really a challenge, to be fair. The H5A project is almost a 3-year delivery timeframe. Well, it might be half of that for the hotel. And so looking at construction starts and when we want to start, that's something we're working through now to say, because I'm sure the public is saying, well, when are we going to start? But we need to coordinate those start times such that our delivery times match up, as opposed to one building that's open for a year while we wait for other buildings to be open. We'd like to have it, call it within a 6-month period, these things line up. So the start times are a function of the end time as opposed to the end times being a function of the start time, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
which is probably a little backwards, right? And on most real estate developments, it's get out of the ground, construct, deliver as soon as possible, which is certainly the case on that first large building. That's the one we got to start first. These other buildings, there's a strategic reason for not starting early, right? So this other project that's going to be privately capitalized, that's part of that first phase, is a 175 roughly key hotel. This will be a 4-star concept. We're currently working with a hotel developer and operator that will own and operate the hotel, and we will own and operate the retail on the ground floor. So we're working through the kind of agreement and partnership with that, which we'll be bringing towards, the Pomsla staff in the coming, kind of weeks or months. And really excited about it, really excited about the concept that they have and what this will bring to the South Valley. There's really not hotels of quality in Silicon Slopes, right? A lot of the folks that come in for Tech Week and those conferences will stay downtown, eat downtown, and drive down to Lehigh. This will bring a 4-star concept. We're not doing, full service
Conference
convention center and everything. I think that the entertainment venue will solve that. Convergence Hall will have that. We're not going to bring a third convention center into the arena, but this will bring a great place for people to stay. So we're really excited about that. And then that's
Zachary.
Yeah.
I don't suppose you can share a brand with us.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought
Close-
you would
we're
say
close-
that, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, we're
anyway.
close to saying that. We're trading paper with the operator on some of those things.
All
So
right.
we probably don't want to publicly announce.
Thank you.
I'll point out, because I'm the details guy, right? But this has been a challenge, to be honest. I'm trying to find the hotel operator. We've gone through multiples of users, all of who have a strong interest who want to be here on the site, but most of which have said, but we want to wait a year or two and we'll just have this land sit. And then once this thing is a success, then we'll come, which really is not an option, right? We need it to go. And so some of our, there's a tremendous amount of desire to be here, but there's little desire to be here first.
Sure.
Right. And so threading that needle with the operator who says, we will come and make this bet with you simultaneously has been a challenge. And we've identified a partner who's willing to do that and who has, tremendous amount of experience and will bring credibility. And so that's been some of the, in kind of just full transparency, some of the challenge that has been to try and get this hotel to happen kind of simultaneously with all the other uses. But I think we're there.
Great.
Yeah. Let's see. And I think the other project we have going on that we're excited about is our affordable housing project and a partnership with Alta Bay Capital, local affordable housing developer, which is gone through the first 2 meetings and presentations to Pomsla staff to go through concept and design review. And this will be delivered as part of that first phase. And this is where, hopefully a lot of folks that work at the hotel, that work at the retail, or just work in that part of the valley in Draper and in that city, will give them an opportunity to come and live in a great community. So this project, just going back to the map, sits just a block off the promenade. This is this number 6 right here. This will be over 2 phases, 400 units. They just onboarded their general contractor. We're partnered together in that. We're a co-developer with them in that. We're working on the design and the meetings. They're really leading the charge because affordable housing is their business, right? And so likewise with timing, we're all working in coordination there, but they are kind of at a similar spot we are on this mixed use project, where we're gone through iterations of the schematic review, been through the POMSLIP staff review process, and now bringing on general contractors and looking to apply for their tax credit allocation that will likely be this summer. Again, it's a kind of timing coordination effort. They'll be ready to go. It's whether or not it makes sense for them to go then, or whether or not it makes sense to go in the fall. We're just kind of still working through that. But so, between those 4 projects, really the 3 in design, the 3 mixed use, and the affordable housing projects, really that's where our design and construction teams and ourselves are focusing our efforts on trying to make those as efficient, as quality, and as economically viable as possible. And right now, from a timing standpoint, we've just started the process for this first phase. We finally reached a process where we feel like the project is advanced far enough that we can now go put that in front of our financing partners. We have documents to a point where we've gone through multiple pricing sets. We feel very good about the budgets we're putting in front of them. We have, advanced leasing with retail partners and getting LOIs and, kind of deals that are at this point somewhat papered, ready to go forward, subject to further advancement of the project. That now we're at that spot, where really our critical path are the efforts of the capital raise. And that's where we're now really focusing a lot of our efforts on. And so we've launched that within the last, call it, 6 weeks. And we're looking at, we're working on onboarding an additional kind of firm with, supporting and helping with those efforts, working in concert with them. And that's where we sit on when we'll go vertical. The critical path is now getting the financing on board to finance its over $225 million of development in our first phase. And so that's where we sit.
So from a project standpoint, you had those kind of 6 projects we highlighted. In addition to that, some other things that are happening, not necessarily in the order on the screen, but we are coordinating closely with Convergence Hall. That's that 4th corner of our main and main, if you will. And so we both need each other, Convergence and the Point partners. So we are coordinating closely, having regular meetings with them, such that we can time our deliveries there as well. And that we are at regular meetings, working through many different items of who's building what. Are we putting in the trees? Are they putting in the trees? Are they putting in the sidewalk? And as you get into it, there's a lot to kind of coordinate. And, we're working with, we're assisting them in terms of their retail layout. This last meeting we worked on trash and saying, hey, that's a plan that's probably not going to work for these reasons. You might want to think about this sort of thing. So we're kind of iterating on those sorts of things. Jumping into retail, we have a number of letters of, letters of credit, letters of intent on retail. We have more restaurant demand, I think, than we can fit here at this project. So we are being somewhat selective and also going and trying to hit a home run as it relates to people who aren't in the market at this point, people who would come to see this. Not that we don't want local businesses, we want a good mix, but we do want to have those new to market entries that would be a real draw to the project. And so we are spending a fair amount of time. We're preparing our materials for ICSC this year, which is in May. And putting our collateral together now for that. I think this year and probably next year will be the more productive years at ICS. So we've gone down in the years in the past. And again, for those who are not familiar, ICS is the International Council of Shopping Centers. It's kind of the main retail conference of the year. It happens in Las Vegas. And so we'll be heading down there in May, pushing, at this point, it's really advancing conversations that we're already having with retailers as opposed to identifying, maybe there'll be some brand new tenants that we meet with, but it's furthering those conversations. The reality is, in order to finish and finalize conversations with retailers, we have to get the design to a point that we can do that, because they have specific questions about loading and very technical questions that the design is not quite there to answer those sorts of things. So we're kind of advancing each piece as we're able to advance them simultaneously. We had a good meeting in the last, when was it, Mike? Two weeks ago with coordination with Now Go Ed and with Palmsla about how we can best coordinate from an office perspective, large users. How can we go attract those users? And some of the conclusions that we had from those meetings were, one, we want to coordinate our efforts together. So we've identified a few things that we can do there in making sure we're on the same page and communicating the same message from our brokers, our team, the Palmsla staff, as well as Go Ed, and kind of coordinating that effort. But also, we've recognized that there is somewhat of a linear path before someone who rhymes with Flugel would come and, want to be here. There needs to be an amenity base. There needs to be something, as opposed to, it's just dirt. And so that's why we focused heavily on this amenity and the promenade and the event center and this retail experience that then can say, okay, now there's something here for people to look at. And so that's very much the mission. But the reality is that these big corporate occupiers will come probably after some of this stuff is in place, which is why we're focusing in and doing it in that manner. But we are still working on those. There are, I think I shared this in the past, there are users in the market who would come here, significant users. There's probably right now a bid-ask spread in the office market. The current, and this isn't a point problem, this isn't anywhere in the market problem. In order to get any sort of return and not lose money on a new construction, we have to charge rents that are more than what the market is willing to bear right now, because there's lots of vacancy in the office market. But generally, people are willing to pay up for a Class A experience that has a lot of amenities. And so that's what we're banking on. Our time frame is such that we're a little bit too far out from deliveries from when people will look, but we're still pushing those and having those conversations.
And I might maybe add to that. I think we're finally starting to see across the country and locally our first kind of green shoots in the office space, both on the capital market side, either sell or financing of buildings where values are coming back from an apocalyptic, like people were losing 100% losses, all of their equity, if they had financed it with debt, was essentially washed as of the last couple of years. And we've seen a first transaction close, another one that will be, probably on the horizon, where you're getting back to a valuation that it's making sense. And we're seeing leasing return in some of the coastal markets. We're seeing good movement there. So I think we're optimistic that we're heading in the right direction. To Robert's point, we go out and we quote still 60 to 70% higher than what they're quoting in the best buildings downtown or in Silicon Slopes. But that's not a point issue. That's an everywhere issue. So unless you have a campus user that wants to do build to suit, it's hard. That formula still doesn't work, but I think we feel much better now than we did a year ago, because we're starting to see the first kind of posts on the scoreboard that make it feel like we're getting back there.
And the good thing is we're focused on the first thing first, right? So we're hoping and trusting that the market is there. So when we have these things, it's going to line up so that we can move the project forward from an office perspective. We talked about hospitality and convergence. Just a couple other things. We're coordinating closely with staff on kind of an operational model and how we're going to function at the point relating to, governance. We're working on a large marketing push that we're coordinating on with Palmsla, both from a the TPP and what we're doing, and naming our projects so we don't call come stay at H5A, right? So we're working on a marketing pieces for each of our projects that's underway. Some video pieces that we're working on. So there's a whole marketing initiative that's been kicked off in the last 60 days. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I had a couple other things I was going to mention.
Hey, Robert, if you have a sec, I have some things to refer to jump in.
Please.
Sorry, I'm out of town. No, just first off, I just want to say I thought that meeting was very helpful for my team and your team. I felt like we were pretty aligned, but I think we recognize there's a lot more we can do to tighten that up. One of the things that I'd mentioned in that meeting, and I pass it across to anybody else. We actually are in the process of hiring one of our corporate outreach people who just happens to be will be covering that area. So kind of North Utah County, South Salt Lake County. And this person would have a very strong engagement in this project. And so we want the best, right? We want to get somebody, we're willing to even take somebody from a non-traditional, if they have a brokerage background, business development background. We can teach them the other skills, but we really want somebody who really gets what we're trying to do at the point. And so I see that really as an extension of the developers and POMSLA as we really nail the right person. The other things that we're doing internally that I hope will help is we're building out a whole research team. I hired a guy who leads our sandbox program, who also had 15 years as a professor. He was a former policy advisor in the legislature, but I pulled him over to really help out on a regulatory environment and making sure that we're promoting the incredible regulatory environment we have, the sandbox that we have. A lot of the businesses that we're talking to on corporate engagement, that is becoming a bigger priority. Anything around AI, life sciences, energy, the policies these states are developing are really determining in large part where they're going. The other person we're hiring is an education expert who really is deeply ingrained in all of our education programs with Talent Ready, with the universities, with Custom Fit. Every corporate person we talk to always comes back to this. And so we'll have somebody dedicated on our team. And I say all these people with disposal to you guys as well, right? We're a team on this. The third is I'm with right now, Tyler, who really is the ecosystem building. A lot of these companies, especially the R&D heavy companies, really want to be around great research that's happening, startups that's happening, venture capital ecosystem. And so I will also have Tyler participating in these meetings to really help them understand the full scope of what they're being provided. So there's not just a, hey, Utah's awesome, here's some accolades, but we want to get you deeply integrated into this ecosystem very quickly. Finally, we're doing soft landing for international businesses. We're building into that to where they can come and spend a month and get immersed into our ecosystem rather than having to go to New York or LA or Boston, where many of them don't want to live. We're making a very conducive place. So as we're out talking to people all over the world, we're building these partnerships with other innovation districts that want to have Utah be their kind of start foothold as they come to Utah. And so there's a lot of things like that. But one thing I just want to say is I appreciate us tightening it up, knowing who's talking to who. And then I say all that to you guys just to leverage us anytime. If you have anybody you're talking to that has questions on different things, obviously loop us in. We would love to help tell the Utah story for you.
We really appreciate that, Jefferson. And I agree with you. I think that meeting was great. I look forward to doing it again. I think we talked quarterly-ish, Mike, if I'm recalling correctly. And so I know that Dawn, we had a number of takeaways from that meeting and next steps for each of us. And so you want to say something, Mike?
Should be on now.
So yeah, we're going to meet quarterly with TPP and GoEd, and then internally POMSLA will meet every month, trying to be a little bit more proactive.
So we look forward to that partnership, and it's impressive the stuff that you're implementing, Jefferson, there at GoEd in terms of putting some of the baseline structure and some of the softwares that you guys mentioned you're implementing to assist in the efforts there. So applaud you there and look forward to coordinating further with you. I think that's probably where we'll leave it from a update perspective, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Robert and Zach. Appreciate that presentation. Let's turn it to board members for your questions or comments. Well, I have a few, if that's okay, and maybe this will prompt some others. Jefferson, thank you for your comments, and this question may be for you as well. Are we coordinating any of our efforts? Is there any interest on the part of EDCU? Are they looking at what we're doing? Is there any interest there, and are we coordinating there?
I would defer that one to Jefferson.
Yeah, Larry, Action Chair. We just signed an MOU with them, and I don't know if you saw, we did a press release about it. There'd been some confusion from when the contract was canceled about what lanes kind of we each played in. So over the last few months, me and my team have been working with their team to really drill down on where the strengths of this each are, rather than trying to duplicate. And so we were able to narrow in on 8 targeted areas and basically acknowledge here's where GOEO really should play the lead. And then this is where EDC should really be leading out. And so the good news is we have a very clear line of lanes and responsibility. And now I would say our partnership's better than ever. So yes, the goal is that we get them actively involved as well in helping promote this, but doing it in a unified way and not I would say somewhat, I wouldn't say contentious, but confusing way. I'd say confusing before. Now I could say we're much more aligned due to the MOU that we signed.
Thanks, Jefferson. That's I think that's great news. Another question I have is in our last planning meeting that I attended, there was discussion about more intense marketing effort, and we talked about planning and shooting a video professionally and well done. We talked about a date when that might come out. Is that still in process, and are we going to be able to hit that date?
Yeah, I was coordinating yesterday with the video team in terms of, we've now had I don't know how many meetings, a few meetings on that, and we've got the group hired. Putting together a professional video is there's lots of moving pieces to that. There's architectural renderings so we got to hire the architect to do certain things if we want to fly through video, and then there's some interviews, and then there's the content and who's our audience. And so we've been working through all of those things. And right now we're on target. Yes. So that is part of the marketing effort that I referenced and underway.
Mayor Ramsey would like to know what the target date is for that.
June.
That's what I recall. Yeah. Other questions from, you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, I appreciate your letting us know about, I hadn't seen the press release about the MOU between GOED and EDC Utah, but I think that's really good. And I used to be very involved with that organization. And so I'm happy to hear that, because it has been a little confusing, I think, for people. And so that's good, because especially with this point, project comes together.
I think that was news to me also. So
Okay.
I'm good
Okay.
to know that.
Yeah, that's really good. Hey, so I know you said you're in the next steps of acquiring appropriate financing and working. So don't yet have a target date for starting to go vertical, because there's still pieces coming together and steps to be taken. Is there a ballpark, or is there something that,
Yeah.
might not be possible, but we're kind of hoping for? Just wondering.
Yeah, 100%. No. So like I said, we're on the pre-development side of those projects. We're, in a spot to start construction later this summer. On the financing side that's the critical path. So that's the target we're shooting for. That's the target that we're giving financing partners. I think right now within the market, it still is difficult to build new construction, especially of this quality, at a price that is less than what you can buy it for, right? And so I think that's just kind of the reality, specifically on the multifamily side of where kind of at a high level that market is. And so this is, I think, one of the most compelling opportunities around the country right now. And we've got multiple groups that are taking this to investment committee. And that's the alignment that we're on from our execution timeline. And it's up to, but the critical path is until that's in place, we're not going to go start building that until we have that solved, right?
Yeah, we
And we
couldn't.
wouldn't get our general contractor is not going to contract and start construction until we've got that
For sure.
proof fund. So
I'll be more blunt, which is we're in the worst multifamily market we've been in almost 30 years here in the state from multifamily. I mean, it's a challenge. There's a lot of supply. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is separate, hey, downtown is not, when people look at the county, they say, well, Salt Lake is oversupplied, right? Well, we're not Salt Lake, right? Even though we are Salt Lake County. And so there's very much an educational process that we have to do with money. A lot of the people who have the size of check that we need are not local, right? They are very much institutional, national or international types of players. And so there's an education process that has to go on to educate them that, yeah, what you see there is not really us, right? This is something different and this is something special. So those are the efforts that we're going through. And I mean, so it's a challenging market, to be fair, the things that are happening internationally and, with war and oil, those are not helping in the efforts, right? There are people who are at this point pulling back a little bit, saying, let's wait to see. So we're not meaning to not give you an answer, because that's our target, but those things are absolutely critical before we can move forward. So our target would be, end of, Q3, Q4, somewhere there to start, but those things are very much dependent on that being the case.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I'm not trying to pin you down to a date. I just know that there are also stakeholders that are watching very, very closely, and they have very strong opinions about whether or not things start to come out of the ground. And so I just was wondering if you could give us any information as we have those conversations and we
Sure.
get asked about it. That's helpful. Also, I just want you to know, I thought the presentation was great. I am not concerned about the fact that the hotel hasn't signed on yet, the hotelier, because right now with nothing out of the ground, same with office, right? It is going to come. They're probably looking at it saying, well, we're going to rate that a B property at this point. Well, as soon as things start coming together, they'll go, wait, all of a sudden, this is an A grade property we want in. That's the process. I understand that. My final thoughts are, so that just doesn't give me stress. That's how it's going to come.
Yeah.
And my final thoughts are just that I know Mayor Walker and I are both attending ICSC. Hopefully we'll see you there. And if there's anything we can do, let us know.
Thank you so much. Welcome that.
Thank you, Mayor, and other members of the board. Any comments or questions? Let me say in conclusion, appreciate very much this update, and to our director, I think the quarterly meetings that we held, and as we go forward, doing a more, granular type discussion when we meet with you, I think is really helpful. So
We agree.
Mike and Robert, whoever has helped initiate that, I think that's a really good move. I enjoyed coming up for that meeting, and I'll do everything I can to make myself available in the future because I think it was really helpful. This is, again, I started out by saying this is pivotal time, but it's also a really exciting time. I think a lot of people, as Mayor Ramsey said, as stakeholders and others are waiting to see this. And I think the public is used to seeing or hearing about a building coming out of the ground, but we're essentially creating a centralized urban center from scratch. Those sort of things take planning. And Robert, you spoke really well about how much of this is related to timing. It's not about starting everything together necessarily. It's about coordinating really how we end up and making sure that, for example, a hotel has someone there taking rooms, and an interest that makes sense. So thank you very much for being here today. Thanks for our coordination, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
Zach. All right, the next item on our agenda is, as I mentioned earlier in my comments, we're pleased to receive a legislative update from Representative Tusher. We're fortunate to have him as a co-chair and as a member of this body, and actively involved in lawmaking as a member of the House of Representatives. So before I do that, though, is any chance Senator Stevenson has he joined us? He's not. Well, before I turn time to Representative Tusher, I think it's worth mentioning that Senator Stevenson, who is a member of this board, just served his last legislative session. He's retiring from the legislature at the end of this year. He served 16 years. He's been invaluable member of this body, and he's been invaluable in his service to the state. And as someone who spent 11 years of my life serving the legislature, I know something about the sacrifice. And I know he's not going anywhere for a while, but I thought that was worth mentioning. So with that, Representative Tusher, we'll get your microphone on and turn some time to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair Snow, and couldn't echo enough your comments on Senator Stevenson and the great help that he's been, not only for the point, but really in coordinating all of the authorities across the state. And the legislature will greatly miss his expertise and background and experience in that. But we're lucky to have him at least through the end of the year, and we'll see what happens after that. We did just finish up the legislative session as of Friday at midnight. Some of you may have heard of a bill that was 5 seconds too long on the vote. That was one of my bills, unfortunately, but we go right to the very end. And during the session, we passed 539 bills. The governor called it, of his 14 years in being involved with the legislature, his very favorite session. So I don't know exactly what to make of that, but I think it was a successful session, and we got a lot done and worked really closely with the executive branch and helped to secure some great things for the state of Utah and move forward in a way that will continue to keep Utah number one in economic outlook and opportunity.
Hey, Jordan, I was just going to say there was one variable change this session. I'm just saying, in case you were wondering why it was such a good session. There was one person who left, so I'm just saying maybe that's part of it.
I don't believe that's the case, but no, it was great working together with everyone. In terms of the effect on POMSLA, there were a few bills that I wanted to highlight that I think had an impact, and I'm happy to answer any questions on these bills. One of them, I was the House sponsor of. The other ones, I wasn't as involved, so there may be people on this council or here that have more background and understanding of the bills than I do, but happy to tee them up and then answer any questions or defer to others who can add a little more color to them. But the first one was Senate Bill 278. This is the Development Authority modifications, and it essentially is the annual cleanup bill that we have for POMSLA. Anything that we were working on over the interim that we felt like was important to change in the law was contained in this bill. And there are really 5 main changes. The first change allowed POMSLA to move forward with allocating 50 acres of land for sale housing. That, as we've talked about in this board, will help support the state's goal to increase the for sale housing stock. As part of that, and I know Mike and Mayor Walker worked closely on this, but there was some language that requires the point to coordinate with Draper City to ensure that the development of any transferred parcels is done so in accordance with the point's objectives and a development agreement that would be negotiated between the city and POMSLA. So I'm sure that will be in the works over the next year as we look to have those parcels go out to market for developers. The second change defines that the privilege tax allocated in phase 1 is restricted to just the first phase. So that 105 acres that make up the first phase. Any capture outside of phase 1 will be negotiated. The third change reverse the privilege tax captured on transferred land. So it dictated that the point captures 25% of the privilege tax on transferred land to fund all of our operational and maintenance costs, and then 75% would go to the taxing entities. So this really flips what it was before. But yeah, a good flip, and should for Mayor Wilson and Mayor Walker, I think they're pretty happy with that change. The fourth change, it dealt with giving back some of the tax increment that we had for Palmsla. So 25% of that tax goes back to the state, and in exchange creates a process for Palmsla to request forgiveness of the infrastructure loan that we took out at the very beginning of the project. And so that's sort of the exchange that we had with giving back some of that sales tax increment. And then lastly, there were some changes dealing with public infrastructure districts, or PIDs. So essentially the change says that future public infrastructure districts that are created by land authorities have to require the majority of the board members of the PID be appointed by the authority board. We grandfathered in all current PIDs that were created by authorities. However, required that all of those PIDs have at least 40% of the PID board appointed by the authority board. Now, we did add a provision in there that allows for an authority board to appoint less than a majority, at least 40%, but could be less than a majority if the board finds a compelling reason to do so, and 2/3 of the board votes in favor of that change. And then also the last change within the PID information there is that the PID can only issue additional bonds or create new debt in accordance to whatever the governing documents that the authority had with the PID, or if a majority of the PID board is appointed by a majority of, or excuse me, appointed by the authority board. So if they're already in compliance that a majority of them sit on the board, then they have the ability to go out and issue new debt. Otherwise, they'd have to close the PID, create a new PID, and that PID then would be required to be majority appointed by the authority board. So that's the first bill that I think was important and really on point what we're doing here with Palmsla. The second bill was our annual omnibus alcohol bill, HB 597. As many of you know, this is a closely negotiated bill every session on changes that are made, and there are a couple key provisions. One that was very specific to Palmsla, and a couple of that I'll just mention is kind of an FYI that will affect some of the development and restaurants or hotels that we have on the site, but are more generally applicable to alcohol laws within the state. So that first change is that it designated Palmsla as a local authority under the Alcohol Beverage Control Act. So this would mean that the authority, or Palmsla, can provide local consent for alcohol licenses within the project area, similar to what the city could do. So rather than us having to be able to fight with Draper on, say they have an alcohol license they want to put in part of the city, but we have some in the Point, we just control those within the Point rather than having to work through the city on that. The other changes, just kind of general changes on alcohol. Last year, you remember there was some strict requirements added around ID requirements in bars and in ordering alcohol. In particular, you had to be ID. Everyone, regardless of your age or how old you looked, had to be ID'd, and you had to be ID'd for every single drink that you purchased. We have relaxed that a little bit. We allow for foreign driver licenses now to count as proof of age, which wasn't counted before. And then restaurants only need to check ID if a patron appears 35 or younger. And they don't have to ID you. You look a little younger than 35, Mayor, but. And that was similar to the rule that was in place before. They no longer have to ID with every single drink, but a bar still has to ID everyone that comes into a bar. We reduced some of the unnecessary regulation, the statutory requirement that businesses use the ID scanning devices, so that's no longer required for every single business. And then there were some changes around some of the outdated operational rules, like requiring liquor storage areas to always be locked. So some changes there. In terms of supporting tourism and hospitality, the minimum number of rooms required to qualify as a hotel for alcohol purposes was reduced from 40 to 30 rooms. So that will help smaller hotels qualify for that. And then lastly, we improved some flexibility for restaurants and mixed use venues. So before, the ratio that you had to have was 70% food to 30% alcohol in order to be a restaurant. We've changed that to 60-40 now. We also allow for some limited movement of drinks between a connected bar and a restaurant under certain conditions. So again, not major shifts in the landscape on the alcohol side, but small tweaks. Mayor Walker had a comment or question.
So the way I understood the bill with respect to regulating licenses, instead, so it doesn't count against my license allocation. So the way I read it, I think that's what you said, is the point has its own allocation system outside and separate from our city license numbers.
Yep, that's my
right?
understanding.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. Again, so that we can coordinate better and not have to
And then
prioritize.
the legal limit for impairment did not drop to 0.02. I know it was talked about earlier on. That didn't get any.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I don't remember any talk of that. All
Hey,
right,
Jordan,
and then
Jordan, oh, sorry. Does it limit the number of licenses that Palmsville can allow in the, I don't know if I caught that in terms of, is it on a per use basis? Is it a certain number of them for the full project, or how did it end up there?
that's a good question. I don't think it's specified. And so I think it goes back to ABS to figure that out.
Because we have ours is based on population. The number of bar licenses we can have is strict on the population, but I'm assuming the way I read that was Jefferson was Palmsville controlled the total number of licenses. I don't think there's a limit, but I don't know. I mean, that's a great question, but the way I read it, it was Palmsville had its own number of licenses as it wanted to do it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, and then they could just allocate within the project how they want to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a limit. I don't know how they determine it. I'm looking to see if it says here.
Because I'm out of bar licenses. Like,
And that was the
Yeah.
biggest concern, is that Draper was limited, and so the point was we have access. So that was really.
Do you want to say that?
Sorry, I think that was really the intent, is that Draper's so limited on what they currently have available that the point wouldn't have access to liquor license. So that's what the legislation was about.
Yep. All right, and then the last bill I was going to mention is HB 475. Executive Director Moss could talk a lot more about this, but it restructures how Utah coordinates our statewide economic development efforts and creates a more formal planning structure for major economic development initiatives like what we're doing here at the Point. One of the major changes, and Robert kind of alluded to that earlier, is it changed GOEO, the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, to GOED again, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which is a little bit of a whiplash because we just changed it a few years ago. But I think, and I'm sure Jefferson can attest to this, that as you go out and talk with other companies and such, the economic development side was a stronger need than economic opportunity. It probably resonates better with those types of companies. It created a new economic development council. And so this Economic Development Council is made up of some state leaders and economic development stakeholders. So it includes the governor, his designee, the president of the Senate or his designee, Speaker of the House or his designee, and then someone from the Inland Port, Palmsville, the Fair Park District, MIDA, SITLA, a representative from the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and a representative from the Utah Association of Counties. And so that board then is looking at all of the economic development that's happening across the state and trying to coordinate those efforts together. It expanded slightly the duties of the executive director of GOED include. Exactly. Including giving him responsibility for coordinating state economic development programs, working with local governments and development authorities, and aligning the state development priorities, which I think is greatly needed. And I know there was some informal working groups that happened last year. This formalizes that, but I think as I've talked with Michael, he's seen a lot of value in the authorities working together closer with GoEd and everything they're doing. And then the last thing I'll mention on this bill is that, and I think it was in this bill, there was some coordination with HB 507 as well, but it allowed for certain confidential economic development information to be better shared across government entities without making it subject to grandma or violating agreements. So in particular, POMSA was named out in that. So certain economic development records could then be shared with GoEd or some of the other authorities or counties and municipalities or this Economic Development Council without violating confidentialities. Now, there may be still a need for those groups to sign an NDA to have access to that information, but it doesn't make it suddenly a public record that anyone else could access. So those were kind of the key things I felt like in the session would be good to highlight, but happy to answer any questions, or maybe if there's other things, I don't know if Michael, you were covering or that you want to bring up.
Thanks, Representative. Questions, comments?
I just wanted to
Mr.
add,
Director.
yeah, I'd just add one, and I apologize, I don't remember the number of the bill, but it did give POMSA the authority to pull an $18 million loan for infrastructure. It would advance the for sale housing project. Thank you.
Great, great addition. Great review, very helpful. Representative Tusher. Questions or comments for Representative Tusher? Let me get your light on there. There you go.
Thank you. That's a lot of good work. I appreciate it. My question goes to the PIDs. If the new policies that you were talking about are grandfathered into what currently exists, what does that mean for the PID boards that currently exist? Like what changes have to be made there and when? And
so for the POMSA PIDs, at least 40% has to be appointed by the POMSA boards.
yeah, that's what I heard you say. But the PID boards for the PIDs that have already been approved, have those boards, those are in place, or have they? I would
They're
imagine.
in place. So
Okay.
so right now we'd have to replace so right now we have one of the 5 seats. We'd have to go to 2 of the 5 seats, and that has to go into effect by July 1 of this year.
And may I ask, that changes for POMSA project. It doesn't affect Inland Port, or is that true for Inland Port?
It
too?
affects all of the authorities. So
All of the
them have to
authorities.
be at least 40%. Again, my understanding is all of the other authorities, PID boards, are majority controlled by the authority board. So we're actually the only one that this will affect in practice, but that requirement is the same for all the
Okay,
PID boards.
that makes sense.
Okay, thanks for that context.
Any other questions, members of the board? All right. Again, thank you very much, Representative. And I should say before we move on, thank you for representing our work so well. The legislature, with your colleagues there and with legislative leadership, it makes a big difference having you there, Representative. And can't tell you how much we appreciate you and Senator Stevenson for representing us and our mission.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Next item on the agenda, number 7, is a report from our executive director, Mike Ombre. As you have heard, we are making significant progress at this site as backbone infrastructure development moves forward. There is much happening in addition to the active construction. So with that, Mike, we'll turn the time to you for your report.
Thank you, Co-Chair Snow. So first, I just want to acknowledge all the moving parts. You know, Robert and Zach presented on the vertical construction, right? And all the projects that are going to be coming out of the ground, hopefully in the next year. I'd also like to mention Convergence Hall, the horizontal infrastructure and potential sub-campus opportunities. There's just so many moving parts to coordinate everything together. So I'm going to focus this on infrastructure updates. Out of the $165 million that was approved, We have awarded about 87% of those in contracts to be awarded. We've spent 80 million of those $165 million, and we plan on spending the remaining portion of the 165 by the end of the year. Included in that is temporary construction utilities that are scheduled to be complete by the end of the month to allow TPP to advance their horizontal and vertical projects. It was mentioned earlier, we do have a Jordan Basin Improvement District board meeting to attend on the 24th to get a couple of nuances hopefully approved that we can advance the Promenade project. Also, Palmsla has solicited and awarded an engineering firm for the 50-acre infrastructure project. So we're negotiating contract terms right now. The intent, we're planning to have that engineered and go out to bid by the end of June, beginning of July for a contractor to start that construction. And then this time next year, we're hoping to put out an RFP for builders and advance that project. And I just want to kind of reflect back on what Robert mentioned about timing, you know, trying to work backwards a little bit and open everything at the same time. We have the same coordination and intent, right? So we're trying to open these for sale product at that same time that a bunch of retail and shopping and restaurants would be open as well. Also, the River to Range, that linear park that's planned, we're hoping to have that open around the same exact time. So we're not, you know, wasting a lot of money watering and maintaining vegetation that nobody's utilizing. So there's a lot of coordination, a lot of thought that's happening. The next quarterly meeting with TPP is April 28th. I just wanted to let you both know. And if any board members would like to be included, please reach out and I'll certainly extend the invite. We do talk about economic development. We talk about schedule, coordination of utilities. We also talk about tenanting and some other items that you probably need to sign a non-disclosure statement for. Ongoing discussions with Salt Lake County on an interlocal and increment capture. We have a meeting scheduled, I believe it's next week, if not the week after. I also wanted to talk about a non-lease hold takedown, and Jen, I don't know if you can help me present that at this time. It was my mistake by not actually adding this to the agenda as an action item. This is the Promenade area. If you look at the screen here, the outlined color in red would be a non-leasehold takedown that would be ultimately deeded to Draper, and they would own and maintain those roads and that infrastructure. What's outlined in green, we would maintain ownership of through DFCM and Palmsla, and in partnering with TPP, we would hire somebody to do the maintenance and management of that area, which is the Promenade area. And then the blue, which is, I don't see any blue up there, but anyway, so this is the non-leasehold takedown area. Oh, the pavilions. Thanks, Robert. It's not coming through on me, but there's two lots within the green that are the pavilions that are future leasehold takedown areas. So I'll be bringing this back to the board. We may have to hold a special board meeting just to approve this. But if there's any questions or if anybody, just wants to review this on their own time and get back to me, by all means.
Thank you very much, Mike. Sure. Before I turn that to you, sir, those looking at this diagram, that future leasehold in blue is actually those two parcels. It's kind of a dark area. Am I right about that, Jen? Yeah. She's put her cursor on that.
That's correct. Those are the pavilions that will be retail.
Okay. Question from Mayor Ramsey or comment?
So what I think I'm seeing here is that the fee simple owned by DFCM would allow the opportunity for flexibility when it comes to holding events, closing public streets for the promenade to be able to have outdoor things, whatever. That is a process that you have to go through and harder to do when it's a public road. So this just allows that flexibility for the project to be able to do things like that because they own the road, right?
That's correct. Also, there's going to be events like you just mentioned, but maybe Christmas decorations and other things that would kind of be subject to, we mentioned a fee that would apply that everybody would take care of. It would be centered in this area as well.
Yeah.
For snow removal, landscaping's elevated, so that would be maintained and owned by the master association and so forth, so on. So
Yeah.
everything that you just mentioned.
That
yes.
makes perfect sense to me. So just making sure I'm understanding that
Yeah.
right. If it is what I think it is, I understand that and I think it's wise. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
So in terms of that board meeting that we need to, meet for a few minutes just to approve this, how are you planning on coordinating that schedule? Does it make sense to take some time now to
We could do that, yes,
figure
by
out
all
if-
means.
if we have 5 minutes, tomorrow afternoon or something?
To coordinate schedules.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion. If we, if you have your calendars,
We could.
yeah, let's do that. If it's all right with you, Representative Tusher, let's huddle after this meeting and work with Jen to help coordinate all of our schedules and come up with that.
I'm
10-minute
gonna guess
meeting.
going over all of our schedules would be so boring to anybody who's
Yeah.
paying attention to this meeting. They'd be like, gag, I don't want to know any of this,
And it might take a minute,
Some of it might be interesting, Mayor. so,
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
and I might talk to Robert after this. If there's not really the necessity to do so, and we can just wait one more month and address it in our next board meeting, we can do that too. So I'll get that answer.
One way or another, we'll figure that out, Robert. Get that done.
And just one last thing, I would just like to thank my team, Don, Nick, Jen. I couldn't do this without you guys. And then also our agency partners, DFCM, John Vance, Taylor Maxfield. They're doing a lot with Convergence Hall and all the horizontal infrastructure. Obviously our partners, the development partners, TPP, Robert, Zach, Jay, we meet multiple times a day, and it's a great partnership and coordinated effort. And also Draper City, Scott Cooley and I, we meet a couple times a week or more. And then my legal team, Carrie Owens and Lauren and Adam with Parson, Bailey and Lattimore. I really appreciate your hard efforts. I've been throwing quite a bit at them lately, so I appreciate your efforts, guys.
Thank you, Mike, for the report, and want you to know how much we appreciate you taking the lead on all of this. We're grateful to have you in the director position. So with that, we come to the next item on the agenda, which is to consider moving into executive session. I think we have some important issues to take up in executive session today. So with that, the chair would entertain a motion that we move into closed executive session. Mayor Walker, that's your motion?
I move that we enter a closed session to discuss either land acquisition, real estate acquisition, legal.
Thank you. Thank you. The motion is that we go into executive session pursuant to Utah Code 52-42051A and D to discuss a project proposal. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Was that Mayor Wilson? I take it?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Mayor. Call for a motion, excuse me, a vote on that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. I'm going to rule that the motion carries unanimously and meets the threshold required. So with that, we will retire. The board will retire to room 450 and take up our executive session, after which we will move back into open public meeting. Thank you. We are now back in open public session. I can't quite get out of legislative mode, so. We have concluded our executive session. We're not taking any action as a result. So the chair would entertain a final motion. Motion to adjourn by Mayor Walker. Do I have a second? Second by Mayor Ramsey. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for reference, you track